Look at the cross, close your right eye, move away and slowly approach the screen without taking your eyes off the cross. There will be a moment when the dot disappears. You are seeing, or rather not seeing, your blind spot, one of the biggest design flaws your body has. It's huge too. You don't notice it because your body fills in the gap with made-up information, but that area is as big as your hand when you stretch out your arm. If it weren't for this illusion created by our brain, we would always be seeing two huge black spots almost in the middle of our field of vision, all because of a terrible design flaw. And the thing is, even if it surprises you, if human eyes were a student's design, they would fail every optics exam. Eyes are essentially a surface that receives light. Light hits the back of the eye, the retina, which transforms the light into neural information. The problem is that your eye is basically assembled backwards. That is, the part of the retina that processes light has the layer that connects to the nerves on top of it. That's why the nerves that process this information, instead of connecting to the outer layers, have to make a huge hole right in the center of the retina to enter, turn around and connect. It's as if a camera's shutter button were right in the middle of the lens. And this is the way it is because evolution makes some pretty sloppy designs. Octopuses and cuttlefish got it right. But we, the vertebrates, had the bad luck of evolving from little fish for whom this design worked well because they were so small. But as we grew and evolved, it doesn't work so well anymore. A proposal full of these makeshift sloppy fixes that are just good enough to get by. Not bad enough for evolution to have eliminated them, but still far from being optimal. They bring discomfort and even problems, some of them serious. And be careful, because this aberration we have in our eyes is one of the mildest. Get ready. Humans shouldn't be walking upright. We're missing several million years of evolution. Is that one of the reasons why quadrobics exists? Yes, this emerging sport exists and in fact more and more people are practicing it. It's a form of physical exercise and a youth subculture that involves using all four limbs while doing sports, as if imitating the movement of a four-legged animal. It's interesting, and if you're laughing, don't, because maybe we should all live our daily lives like this. We're in a kind of intermediate evolutionary phase when it comes to bipedalism. We can do it, but our spine still isn't designed for it. The vast majority of species on the planet don't experience age-related back pain. This happens to us because our spine is designed to protect the spinal cord and support a bit of weight, but it's not meant to be the main support point for the human torso. It wears out, and very quickly. It's like if those plastic tubes that protect electrical wires were responsible for supporting the weight of an entire building. That's why it's inevitable that if you live long enough, you'll have back pain someday. And the problems of walking on two legs don't end here. If you're a man, you're off the hook, but women should have a wider pelvis than they do. This is, in fact, one of the most famous evolutionary tensions in the human body, so important that it even has a name. The so-called obstetric dilemma. On one hand, evolution pushes for the pelvis to be wider and wider because otherwise babies are born too underdeveloped. Human babies are by far the most helpless at birth in the entire animal kingdom, except for marsupials, and we also can't keep getting smarter, since a larger skull would allow us to have a bigger brain. But on the other hand, if you keep making the pelvis wider and wider, there comes a point where we wouldn't be able to walk properly. And we're right in the middle between those two disasters, on the verge of having to give up bipedalism and at the same time on the verge of starting to lose all our babies and unable to keep getting smarter. Today we also know that the limit is not just mechanical but also energetic. Gestating for a longer time would require too much energy from the mother. If this evolutionary pressure hadn't existed, maybe now we'd all be like the big brain meme. For this reason, human childbirth is considered one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult, in the entire animal kingdom. If you're going to be a mother, stay strong. If you're going to be a father, please encourage her for me. This crazy thing you're seeing is the recurrent laryngeal nerve. You use it to talk, breathe, and swallow, but its anatomical path is so absurd that it's often used as the perfect example of how evolution doesn't design from scratch, but is lazy and mediocre and prefers to patch up what's already there. This nerve should only be a few centimeters long, since it connects the brain to the larynx, which are right next to each other. But instead of this, it goes all the way down the chest, then loops around the aorta next to the heart, and then goes back up the neck to the larynx. A huge detour, very inefficient and completely unnecessary, with a fascinating explanation. It turns out that the vagus nerve was developed by our distant ancestors, some little fish in which the nerve connected to their gills, which are right next to the heart. But over millions of years, the heart and blood vessels moved away, shifting toward the chest, separating from the larynx. But since the design of the nerve made it pass between the arteries, it ended up trapped between them. And instead of being redesigned, evolution simply made it much longer, passing under the aortic arch and then going back up. There you go, problem solved. And hey, since we brought up the larynx, we can't ignore how crazy it is that the food tube is the same as the breathing tube. I mean, at what point did that make sense? Well, the answer once again is our ancestors, the little fish. Think about it. What do fish eat? Water with food. And what do they breathe? Well, water too. Why would they have two tubes if the fluid is the same? Fish open their mouths to swallow water, which goes to the stomach or the gills interchangeably. And when we had to develop lungs, what did evolution do? Develop an independent tube for air, maximizing the chances of survival? Of course not, in our case at least. Cetaceans were luckier. Their blowhole connects directly to their lungs, so the risk of choking to death is practically non-existent. Humans could easily have something like that, but in our case, we get by with a makeshift solution called the epiglottis, which unfortunately causes the death of tens of thousands of people every year. This happens when you patch things up instead of fixing the root cause. And by the way, speaking of tubes, it's also a mess that in men the fun tube is the same as the waste tube. It's especially noticeable with age, with prostate problems, and women aren't exempt either. In an optimal design, these areas shouldn't be in the same place because then you get infections. And I'd like to finish with the biggest ticking time bomb in the human body, a result of this unprofessional design we have, immune privilege. You should know that the testicles, the brain, and the eyes are areas of your body where your immune system has almost no access. They're a pain. They're so critical and fragile. Yes, from an evolutionary point of view, the testicles are more critical than your nose. The human body said, I can't risk them getting infected, and the inflammation caused by the immune system's response destroying them. So instead of improving the immune system, which would be a lot of work, it said, I'll isolate them, they'll manage on their own, and this is really serious. Because it's rare for it to happen, but if that separation barrier breaks, since your immune system doesn't recognize the cells of these organs because they've never been part of its system, it attacks them until they're destroyed. There are many people who have gone blind because of this, because of an attack from their own body. But since they're not the majority of the population and we keep having children, evolution doesn't care. Thank you very much for watching the video with your healthy eyes, and if not, at least for listening to it. And goodbye. Thank you.